Disney released their new trading card game Lorcana as a way to contest the TCG market with the giants such as Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And mainly Magic the Gathering. They have been on record saying they want to make the game as accessible and as affordable as possible so that anyone can play, either in a casual or a competitive setting. With product being so difficult to come by, I wanted to see how the price of the current top 3 meta decks in Lorcana compares to that of the other games we mentioned when purchased from sites such as TCG Player. While anyone can go and pick up a starter deck and enjoy the game from there, it's undeniable that to compete at the highest levels, you need to play a refined deck. So today, I'll be comparing the price of Lorcana to the top 3. I'll be pricing the cards in US dollars since that's where the majority of the player base is. It's important to note that in other regions, the game might become a bit cheaper. The 3 decks I'll be going with for Lorcana will be Amber Steel Midrange, Ruby Amethyst Control, and Emerald Amethyst Aggro. This will allow us to price each of the 3 different traditional playstyles as well as looking at a variety of different ink colours. For the lists, I'll be using lists that have topped high level events such as Pro Play Games 1K events and other similar level tournaments. Amber Steel is currently the most popular deck, as we can see by this infographic of the most recent top 16 at Miami TCG-Con. Using Aerial to find and sing songs earlier than they can typically be played creates a lot of tempo for the deck. While we do see 2 different versions of this deck, one using Rockstar Stitch to spam the board with aggro units, and the other opting for a slower game plan, I'll be going with the first place list from the Pro Play Games Miami TCG-Con, which uses the Rockstar game plan. The main money card in this deck, and honestly all of Lorcana, is Rapunzel. This card has an insane effect which heals your characters and draws you cards. It's not uncommon to see 4 of this card in Amber Steel lists, however for this list we only see 3 of them. TCG Player currently has this card listed at $58 each, which already, just for these 3 cards, is a significant amount. The only other legendary in this deck is Stitch Carefree Surfer. We are using 4 of these and they're currently at $45 each. There are also multiple super rares which are around $10 to $17. Hopefully we're starting to see what the problem is. The rest of the cards in the deck can be picked up for quite cheap, but these cards that make the deck the meta giant that is are expensive, especially for a game with no competitive events. Priced at $520, that's an absurd amount, but let's hold off on judgment until we compare to the other games. Let's look at one of the more budget lists Lorcana has to offer. Emerald Amethyst is an aggro deck that wants to win as fast as possible, playing cheaper characters and primarily questing when they have the chance. Typically in TCGs, these type of decks are the ones that are the most affordable. This deck only runs 3 copies of a legendary, this one being John Silver. It is important to note that with this specific card, its value is rising due to hype with an upcoming set. TCG Player has market value at $23 at the time of recording, but the cheapest available being $35. Again, we have a single legendary making up most of the price of the deck. The deck also runs 1 super rare of Genie on the job, but this card is only $3. The only other notable card is Cusco. This is the main card in the deck and one of the main reasons that it's able to compete. It's only a rare, but it's currently $13 each, which in comparison to other cards is very affordable. This deck comes to $188, which is a whole different league when compared to Amber Steel, but it's still quite pricey when it comes to a budget deck. Finally, we have Ruby Amethyst Control. This deck was originally the deck to beat, and the legendaries in the deck hit some insane highs, but it's gradually been going down since the meta has branched out, with the main money card in the deck still being Elsa's Spirit of Winter, which is currently $31, and we also have 4 Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, which are currently also $30 a piece. A nice middle ground of $288 for this deck, which is arguably on the same power level as Amber Steel, which was around double the price. Okay, so now we have the prices for the Lorcana meta, let's take a look at Magic, since it is the main competitor in the eyes of Disney after all. Magic has a lot of different formats that are played quite heavily, but for the sake of the video I looked at the standard lists. There is an argument that Commander is the main format, but it's difficult to price this since it's a singleton format, and to my understanding is more of a casual format. At the time of recording, the top 3 decks on MTG Goldfish are Domain, Esper Midrange, and Azorius Soldiers. I will also point out that Mono Red was 4th and seemed relatively cheap, coming in at only $77. Domain has a lot of valuable cards to talk about, mainly Atraxa, which is a 4 of, which is only $14 each. The average price for card in this deck is a lot higher than the Lorcana decks. There are a lot of cards that are around $10 each. Despite this, the deck price comes to $290, which is the same price as Ruby Amethyst Control. Esper Midrange followed this trend of having multiple cards that were around $10 to $15 each, but had 3 copies of this card called Sheoldred, which were going for like $80 each. It didn't seem to be core to the deck however, as I found some lists that didn't have any of them at all. The price for this list with the Sheoldreds was $534, which was scarily close to the price of the Amber Steel list. Just like how Domain was similar to the price of Ruby Amethyst, the price of this deck without that card was only $308, which is still more expensive than most of the decks we have spoke about, but miles cheaper than the other version. The last Magic deck I want to talk about would be Azorius Soldiers. This deck again follows the trends of having a few cards in a $10 range. This deck has far fewer than the decks previously mentioned. This deck only comes to $188, which again is almost exactly the same as the Lorcana counterpart, being Emerald Amethyst. On to Pokemon now, and this is probably one of the more cheaper games that you can buy if you want to be quickly ready to build a deck and play at a high level event. Pokemon has a very solid reprint policy, often printing main deck staples and sealed products such as tins or box collections, sometimes even going so far as to print whole decks that by themselves can be taken to local events and honestly do quite well. The meta looks quite healthy, with almost 10 decks having at least a 5% meta share. Lost Box is the first deck to look at. Limitless TCG has this price at $74. Although it is worth noting that Forest Sealstone is currently going for $18 on TCG Player, Limitless only has it at $6. Regardless of this, the price to play the most popular deck in Pokemon is significantly cheaper than any of the other decks we've spoken about. For only half the price of the cheapest Lorcana deck, we can build the most popular Pokemon deck. Gardevoir is another extremely popular deck. It comes in at less than $60, with the most expensive card being Mew EX, which is only $8. Lugia is the third deck, and again, this deck is only a fraction of the price of any other deck in the other card games, being only $65. Maybe this is Pokemon being really cheap, or maybe it's a case of Lorcana and Magic being really expensive, but the total for all three of these decks is only $199, meaning that if you were looking to play a competitive TCG for under $200, you could either buy 3 Pokemon decks that work at the top level, or you could buy a single budget tier 2 Lorcana deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is known to be overly expensive. This is likely due to the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh!'s format follows a banless system as opposed to a yearly rotation. This means we see some cases where strong cards get printed, become staple in the meta, and then don't get reprinted for a very long time. The first card that comes to my head was really Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This card changed the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Was played, and when it was released, it didn't receive a reprint for a very long time, causing its price to rise and rise until the inevitable reprint happened. I'll be using results from YCS Richmond, as it was the most recent event I could find data on, and the first place list was Unchained. This deck has the odd card that costs $5 here and $20 there, but then we see Triple Tactics Frost, which is only a one-of, but is around $90. The site I was looking at had this deck at $500, which falls in line with Yu-Gi-Oh! Being super expensive, but kind of on par with Magic and Lorcana. The next deck was Diablo Star Infernal Noble Knight? I hope I said that name correctly, but you get what I'm trying to say. This deck come to an even higher price of $724. This was mainly because it was running an $80 free of in Seeker of Sinful Spoils. It's just insane to price a deck at. Finally, we have Purley. This deck came to only $370 and just runs a few odd $15 cards here and there, but still is quite expensive for a deck. So what can we take away from these prices? Realistically, comparing Lorcana and Magic, they're essentially the same, but that could be a problem since Magic has been around for so long, where Lorcana is new and trying to establish itself. Therefore it's gonna have a much more difficult time trying to compete with a giant that already has a huge player base. We also see that comparing to Pokemon, it's just never gonna happen. You can essentially buy the whole Pokemon meta for the same price as the cheapest Lorcana meta deck, so I don't see that happening anytime soon. But then again, Pokemon does have a very set in stone target audience of what they want to attract, and they want to be that cheaper card game. And then we can compare it to Yu-Gi-Oh! As well, and we can say thankfully we're not in those positions, at least not yet, where we don't have to pay these ridiculous prices for these decks just to compete. Overall, I think depending on how Disney plans to reprint Lorcana, I think we could be in a really good spot to have quite a cheap TCG.